Hearty huzzah and welcome! It's that time again, as it seems. We have released another edition of our game, sporting a developer's commentary, and you're one of the proud buyers. And that's why I'm happy to tell some delicate details about our game. And in this case, the game is Deponia, the first part of the trilogy, and since you have a developer's commentary version, naturally you also own the other two parts. That was an impressively clever move on your part, and before we get right into the action, we have something special here. A little tutorial. I'm pretty certain you know how to play point-and-click adventures, so in case you don't, here we will show you the ropes in a comedic manner. I hope you have, in fact, fun, and as I didn't properly introduce myself, my name is Pokey, or Jan Müller-Michaelis. But let's stick with Pokey, just Pokey. You'll get to see my face a couple more times during the trilogy, or rather my comic alter ego. Because during the game I will grab my guitar to summarize the events with a cheerful huzzah on my lips, impersonating this hobo guy in the beginning of each chapter. And of course you can click me in almost every room and I will tell you something about Deponia's production, which lasted several years. Well, not quite as long as I'll keep talking, but almost. So enjoy. Okay, and here we are in the first room, right in the beginning of the game. Here we will of course meet Rufus. Well, then again, I'd like you to play that part yourself and won't spoil too much. The beginning of Deponia is rather classic. That means a lot of the information about Rufus comes from trying things yourself through interaction, and there's a lot of that. Not an easy feat, I might add. By now, in the late installments, the introduction is much smoother for your convenience, but this one's more like Edna and Harvey, where you are supposed to puzzle and guess your way through the intro. And since you already clicked the developer's commentary, I'm glad to tell you that we actually convinced Rufus to come over to our studio. Hello, Rufus!
Hey, Pokey, great to be here.
Yeah, this screen must really be a trip down nostalgia lane for you. But as I said, let the players figure out where they ended up and what to do. So I'll ask you something completely different. You were voiced by Carrie Shale for this game. Do you think that he's a good choice for this very, very, very important task?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you'd ask. Well, first things first, I've known Carrie for quite some time. We're kind of friends. And I think he's okay with me saying this. In fact, personally, I'm very fond of him. We've been through a lot. We got to know each other when I returned from Algeria. I had some bad luck there. I don't want to go into it. And then we both rode that train in Switzerland. And again, don't want to go into that. But is he the right choice for the role? Yeah, he's great. I don't want to comment any further.
With a great role comes great responsibility, right? And great is just the right word for the challenge to interpret your work of a lifetime as a voice actor, isn't it?
Well, Chaplin always dreamed about making a Napoleon film. Eventually he didn't, but as you can't actually represent Napoleon, only replace him. And this situation is quite similar.
So, after we've puzzled through the first hurdles of packing a suitcase, we can now play Rufus' first escape attempt towards Elysium, leaving behind this heap forever. Yeah, well, the weather forecast spent us over in that one. We were told there would be rain in this scene, and as a matter of fact, I always planned this scene to take place in the rain. I actually also found an old character design of Tony standing in a puddle on the screen, wearing a heavy raincoat. The smoke she always has in the corner of her mouth is just as soaked as she is, all dripping and bent. By the way, Tony's character is roughly inspired by Doris Day. The more you know. And here we are in the front of Tony's home. I can comment a bit on the visuals. This is in fact the first screen created for Deponia at all. I even made the first version myself and thus the very first asset for the game. Yeah, my first version of the screen. Edna style though. Back then, to the left was a pretty huge tire heap under the plateau with the tunnel leading to the town center. No, wait. Actually, the heap was on the right, and left was a pile of old ET cartridges. At the time, I read somewhere of the story that the Atari developers who created the ET console game dumped all remaining copies in the desert somewhere, as the game did exceptionally poor. This story was so hilarious that I had to give it a friendly nod in the screen while I was still thinking maybe I will do the screens myself again. That never happened, and I'm actually quite happy about this. Since we recruited Michael Benrath. No. I already worked with him together on a licensed game called 1.5 Nights, basically the second Daedalic game. But, or was it the third after Whispered World? Before Whispered World? Yeah, before Whispered World, yeah, right. There he also did the background, and I was convinced that he's exactly the right person for drawing the cartoony backgrounds for a world like Deponia. And indeed, we were lucky to have him on board, and that he brought along enough time and motivation to work with us for several years. In fact, Micha was the first and only one on the team sitting in one room with me for roughly 1 year, and I fleshed out the complete concept for Deponia. So it was supposed to be one single game, the complete journey, so to speak, until we realized that the whole thing was way too huge for only one game, and we eventually had to split it into 3 parts. Another remarkable thing about the screen is that I noticed how alarmingly committed our animators are. We were on a rather strict timetable in regards of animation, despite our long to-do list to breathe life into Deponia. And it was here that an animator worked on a mailbox, and she was just supposed to give it a quick animation. It even was listed as a nice to have, as it was just a standard use wrench with mailbox situation. We usually solve things like that with standard animations, at least in older titles. But for some reasons it ended up on her list, so she made this very elaborate animation where Rufus sent that mailbox flying and caught it in his coat. All I thought was, wow, I want stuff like this for the whole game. And that's where the true insanity of Deponia started. Awesome. From a scripter's point of view, this room is really interesting as well as a perspective of this bridge. It's quite a challenge for a 2D adventure engine. You see, Rufus moves forward while walking down the bridge and still moves forward when he walks up that bridge again. That means moving the character along the y-axis has him walk to the front until he hits the middle, and then he moves to the back or the north of the screen. And that's something Visionaire, our engine, is not designed to do. And that made this a very, very difficult screen scripting wise. We tried a lot and actually did a redraw of the screen to polish it as much as possible. Very interesting screen right in the beginning. Wow, what an introduction. Minigames, minigames, minigames! Curse or blessing? A frequently asked question. I myself am a big fan of minigames, especially if they're like this. Easy access, very simple looking at first glance, like not a challenge at all, but in fact they're quite a nut to crack. Yet still minigames like this won't take that long to complete despite all complexity. But there's also something I'd like to call minigame drama, and when that kicks in, that is, if you find this minigame drama in a minigame, then the minigame can be considered a success as far as I'm concerned. And that's true for this one. You move the cursor like a knight in chess, and you think, can't be that hard to get to the rails up there, but when we look at the lever, we see both directions leading to the upper left are blocked. So you have to realize, wow, that's not so easy after all. Now you can try, of course, to sneak your way around the problem, but again, damn, we end up on the same field every time. So there must be some kind of trick. Now you can develop a strategy or just try things. Both approaches will solve the problem sooner or later, of course. So there's a choice between strategy on the one hand and try and error on the other, even without understanding the game's twist. And that makes this game a nice representative for the genre. But there's a third component. This one doesn't tap too much into that, yet this minigame also tells something. And telling is dramaturgically relevant, basically. So what's been told is, of course, about Rufus, as he's the one being introduced. You learn a bit about how he ticks, you get a slight understanding how he structures his plans. In this case, he just screwed that blade right on there without even thinking about later negative consequences. And that's how it's dramaturgically relevant, and the punchline is only the icing on the cake. It also gives us an idea of Rufus' direction. Okay, Rufus doesn't want to get to Elysium, but rather get tossed on those monorail tracks before. So now we have a direction. We see where he wants to go. He has a clear goal indication by the two crosshairs. Considering this, it tells quite a lot. And there I was almost claiming this minigame didn't have that much to tell after all, especially not as much as other things have to tell. And I really like minigames that tell a lot on the meta layer, but more on that later on. I really look forward to that. For now, have fun playing the minigame. Hey, that went well. We're on board of the Organon Cruiser, one of the most important of Rufus's steps towards Elysium, and what makes this room especially important is, of course, the introduction of our female protagonist. And what a coincidence! She's right next to me here in the studio, and that's Goal. Hello, Goal!
Hello, Pokey.
Maybe you could just tell us straight from the heart what it was like when you first met Rufus, and also how you cope with the dicey situation right now.
I was told there was a script.
Oh, you... okay, you thought we'd write dialogue and that this whole thing would be in any way organized. Well, we thought it would be a better approach if we just... there's no script.
Right. Really well done.
Well, okay, crap. John, just to get this straight, didn't you say I don't need to write a script? That's what you said, didn't you?
No, Pokey. I said you need to write a script.
He didn't. He said I won't cross my heart. And I clearly remember him saying...
Oh, another stroke of genius.
Yeah, whatever. It's way too exciting right now to listen to our very elaborated developer's commentary anyway, and I can totally understand if you want to continue playing now. Oh, yes, this is the screen in front of the city gates. At this point, I really need to apologize to Rufus for giving him such a rough ride through the Deponia trilogy. We thought what would be especially hilarious in our hilarious game, and the answer is things get funny if someone gets hurt, of course. And that's why we implemented the cactus field to your right, a place Rufus already explored very thoroughly. The mechanical bull is another thing, and maybe later on something's happening with that truck's battery, or rather the battery's acid, you can already imagine. So with all sincerity, I'm truly sorry, Rufus. Sorry for the ordeal you went through during the production of Deponia.
Yeah, well, first off, if you want to apologize, do it privately, not now when all the users are listening, okay? Because I'm not going to buy that. We'll talk about this again privately. So, to be honest, I brought this onto myself, really. I was asked for my opinion how this setting should, what the setting should look like, and I offered advice accordingly. I said, like the police station of Commissioner Hunter in the Donald Duck pocketbooks, with the two lamps and the stairs. And then someone sent a picture of my father's den, like his man cave, his hobby room. And now it looks like that. Really weird. I was genuinely scared, and the situation was about as pleasant as visiting my father's hobby room.
Yeah, shame we had to cut out that scene in the hobby room. It's kind of part of the backstory, but maybe we can use that in a prequel.
No, you don't get me, do you? No, we did not cut that one out. It's all flashbacks. And even the battery is the same brand. And you really didn't have to stick that accurately to the reference. But it's all, forget it. That ship has sailed, I guess.
Yep, too late. Another big and difficult screen. This is pretty much the crossroads screen, and it also has a scribble done by me. It's in my head very clearly, and I still know how I established the house's visuals. I'm actually a bit proud of the fawn facades and the golden roofs. We, of course, that is Misha and me, put a lot of thought into the composition of the houses. What would they be made of? We actually did concepts of wrecking balls, dredgers, cranes, and garbage trucks, and then disassembled them. And all those engine parts and parts of the hull you never get to see are now jury-rigged roofs. I think that's quite exciting and enjoyable. In this screen, though, I had a little argument with Bade, my lead game designer, as well, who struggled with the abundance of exits and different levels. For example, one towards Tony's shop in the front. Yes, you can see it there on the right corner. Or the water tower to the left and all that. Script-wise, this was a huge effort to get everything in there nice and clean. Then you have those long walking passages and so on. He basically threw his hands over his head, going all like, "Oh, Pokey, you can't freaking do that. The screen is an atrocity." Okay, he doesn't speak like that, but for the sake of story and content, I just wanted this long shot. So, it's a big crossroad screen, kind of an establisher of the town. Like a map. It's something I just desperately wanted. So it's a map, but also an ordinary screen with the flow of the story. And yeah, I got my way. To be honest, I don't know if that was beneficial to the game after all. Actually, I should really listen to what Bade says. I always should listen to what Bade says. We finally reached the town hall, and a character who was supposed to have just a minor support role, who even in the final version, the quote-unquote beautifully animated final version, still looks like my very crude sketch. And that is Lottie, voiced by the talented Tim Bentinck, in the English version at least. Lottie was designed to be a minor character in Deponia, as I said, yet she still makes a reappearance later on. I guess I can't spoil that much. I never intended that, though, and I don't know why this character got so overwhelmingly much positive feedback. In fact, the press in each territory always had a spotlight on Lottie. And I also remember that very long and elaborately mail which I answered with a lot of time and effort, talking to an upset customer who claimed we would ridicule transsexual tendencies in Deponia. I strongly disagreed with this perception of Lottie, and granted, even if her falsetto is exaggerated and cliched, Lottie herself is not a ridiculous character. This part belongs to Rufus and Rufus alone. Everyone around falls victim to Rufus's ridiculousness. So the most beautiful thing about that is that Rufus actually is neither biased nor intolerant in any way, at least not in a common way. What upsets him is vastly different than the things other ordinary idiots rant about. Ordinary idiots have in fact a certain obligatory intolerance towards others. Rufus, however, he is a special moron. His kind of intolerance is of the liberal kind. He thinks all his fellow people are equally stupid, and that makes him, at least in that regard, very liberal. He treats everyone equally shitty, so no matter the background. This is the last consequence of the liberal thought illustrated in Deponia. Welcome to Deponia. My name is Pokey Pokinson. So this is the assembly hall. It's one of those scenes where our Alex, who played Goal, really shined or rather an incredible acting job on Goal's part, who may want to give us all the details about how tough this was in terms of acting to transport the concept of a sleeping beauty into this hall. The scene is heavy with fate and has this aura of great expectations. How did you do that?
Yeah. I imagined this a bit differently, actually. I was promised a lead role, after all.
Whoa, wait a minute. It is, in fact, a leading role. It's a very important central role.
I hardly had any lines.
Yeah, maybe, but you had presence. That's what a Sleeping Beauty scene is all about, presence. I think we have to cut now. I have a lot of exciting questions to ask, of course, but I don't want to forestall too much. So we postpone that until a later screen and commentary. After all, I want you to stay tuned, and also let's not ruin the mentioned aura with too much babble. That being said, see you on the next screen. Oh yes! What we see here is the first Micha screen, the first screen Micha actually has drawn, and you can see with an overly critical eye that there are still some rudimentary textures he ditched on the way or changed something. He revised it several times. The more we got into the world of Deponia, the more we got an eye for details. Yes, this could be a little bit different, or this can be like blah, blah, blah. In this case, though, the first draft looked quite similar to what we got in the end. There was a bit less texture to it, a bit less cartoony, and some more daring textures on single objects. Yeah, I remember clearly that this was our only screen for a long time, and we'd show it at presentations to get potential investors hooked for our big project, Deponia. Game-wise, not too much happens here, as it's more of a crossroad. Of course, it gets you into the environment, and of course, there's Hanek in the lower left, who contributes to the mythology of the trash scouts. But what I like most are those hints and bits of story concerning Hanek and his wife happening later in the dialogue, especially when you use items with Hanek, like the parrot and all that. Some hilarious stuff will happen, believe me. All in all, I'm very happy we had this scene as our first. It didn't really help us selling the project, though, so it took us years until we got Deponia signed. But I guess that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Lonzo's Bar. It's quite an interesting room content-wise. As a matter of fact, we rarely had moments, neither in A New Beginning or Wizard World nor in the Breakout, where the protagonist could feel at home in his environment. Okay, there was Sedgwick in the beginning of Whispered World. He had a trailer, but you leave that behind within the first two screens. And in addition, it's a traveling circus, so even Sedgwick's environment isn't a familiar one for him. Edna, on the other hand, has no memory, and so she's in a complete unfamiliar place. And in A New Beginning, of course, we have Bent alone in his house at the fjord, and he immediately has to leave. But here we can explore Rufus' very own turf along with him. This way we can get character information between the lines through casual dialogue. What I found most interesting was that there are actually people who still tolerate Rufus' company, and Lonzo is among them. Despite the fact that Rufus is, of course, a load of trouble, and Lonzo is clearly annoyed by them, he still looks at it from a humorous point of view. There's a certain tongue-in-cheek attitude between those two. It's this talk where you get how both of them, and Wenzel for that matter, roll. And of course, the synergy shines also through when talking to Tony. He even kind of reflects to that. It diminishes a bit later in the game, but it's solidly established nonetheless, which is quite remarkable. I mean, characters like Lonzo, Tony, Wenzel, those were characters I wrote really early. Or Gizmo or Mayor Lotek, they react in a way to Rufus as they can anticipate when he actually listens or when he just zones out, so they can throw all kind of stuff at him without any consequences. It's this subliminal love-hate relationship with Rufus. This permanent awful struggle to educate him about something while all you want to do is just to resign. That's something that came quite naturally while writing to these characters. I never consciously realized that it's kind of a logic consequence to the development, having to endure Rufus over a long period of time. In the course of the trilogy, Rufus will meet a lot of characters, and funny thing is, most of them will react, or at least will tend more and more to react just like his old peers from Kuvak towards him, like Lonzo or Tony. They grow very similar to his old relationships, and that's quite exciting how all that comes together. It plays out quite well. This screen also deserves a comment for the featured music, and that's because this is the first screen not composed by Finn from Periscope, but it's in fact a snippet of a song I recorded for a friend of mine. By request, I uploaded it to my YouTube channel. It's called Dünnes Eis, which is German for thin ice, and the riff nicely fits into the scene. After we finished production, I forgot the damn pub song we wanted. We have a pub in almost every game, and only in the end I remember that. Same thing with Harvey's New Eyes, and then again with Chaos on Deponia. I just tend to forget the odd pub song. You can't just reuse some other track there. You need something unique in the to create this pub atmosphere. And that's why I decided to put that part of my track in there. Thank God we did fine with Goodbye Deponia. We composed a song, or Finn composed a song for Goodbye Deponia for the pub scene. But to be honest, 1 week after the release, I woke up in a state of mild panic, ridden by one thought. It really happened. I thought, oh crap, we forgot to include that pub song. Gladly we didn't. It only got used that one time in the sewers from Goodbye Deponia, but we definitely included it. Just seems like I have developed kind of a deeply rooted phobia of forgetting a pub song amnesophobia, or something like, since Harvey's New Eyes and Chaos on Deponia really gave me nightmares. Luckily, there's that 8-bit song, great one too, in Goodbye Deponia, but we'll get there. Until then, stay tuned. Oh, wow. This is clearly not my favorite screen. When I look at it, I see a tale of lost battles. One of them is the blast map, which I imagined completely differently. Ultimately, we had a certain, let's say, miscalculation in terms of background, and that's why we didn't plan the screen at all. We didn't have the budget for it, and I suggested we'd somehow take just the layout of Kuvok's town center. We need a layout for that anyway, so and then we just turn it into a postcard or something and mark our trash mines on it to indicate the blast areas, which wouldn't be that important for the actual blast anyway. Yeah, I don't want to spoil too much, since you probably didn't get to that point by now, depending on when you actually clicked on my face. Well, I hope it's not too late to tell you that you shouldn't click me right away. I love to talk a lot, and most often I give away stuff about puzzles and such, so beware possible spoilers ahead when you click me. Click carefully and responsibly. Yeah, it's probably too late for that, but I tried anyway. Back to the tunnel system, which is basically the sketch I did within 30 seconds. Somebody adjusted the colors so it would fit the tone, and ultimately it's really not what I had in mind. And thus, looking at it, it still leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, reminding me that this is so much more ugly than what I imagined. But since we seriously ran out of money at some point, we just had to create this patchwork monstrosity, and there was nothing that could be said against that in the end. So it's a minor defeat, visually. The second lost battle is that this screen is referenced and declared as a minigame by the help system, as well as during our concept phase, despite the fact that this is actually not a minigame. It's a close-up puzzle, part of a puzzle where the camera zooms in, and now it looks like this is supposed to be a minigame, and the minigame help basically just tells you what the puzzle is about. Not really what I would call a clean cut, but that's where I lost again against our Bade, our head of game design, who said, nope, this one has its own controls, which are different from standard adventure controls. This makes it a minigame, and that's that. But, as you know, I should always listen to Bade. That's important. Always listen to Bade. Otherwise, the games will suck. Yeah. Wenzel lives in a kind of dollhouse. I'm a big fan of screens like that unfold room by room, even though everything happens basically on the same screen. And that's why I took the liberty of doing it exactly that way in this case. We did it in a new beginning as well, in a more limited way, and I'm just very fond of that. It's a great use of adventure visuals. Adventure screens are pretty similar to a theater stage, in fact. There you would do it with lighting, and here we use visuals. When I do the writings for a game, dialogues always come second after the cutscenes. Here I establish the characters and their relationships, and so I did with the relationship between Rufus and Wenzel, and I was glad I could give it some depth via multiple choice dialogue. I'm especially looking forward to the part where Rufus laughs at him, going like, that's because you're so small. That's the punchline, and I just spoiled it. But with the proper build-up, it's a real comedic jewel. Additionally, you can enjoy one of the scarce nude scenes in the screen, but that's happening much later. Well, depending on when you actually clicked this. So, have fun. One thing I'm frequently asked is if there's a real-life reference to the character of Tony. Something along the lines if I had some bad relationship experience with women, but I can assure you, despite the fact that the argument between Tony and Rufus seems legitimately vivid and real, I'm a very ironic person and I'm on fairly good terms with my ex-girlfriends in most cases. Well, actually, in all cases. I seem to have a tendency for drama, but not towards argument. Thus, the cliché of the acid-breathing dragon ex was never something I actually had to deal with myself. Then again, I'm not Rufus. Thank God I'm not. But back to the characterization, I think it's a nice between the lines image for Rufus's motivation to leave his home behind, that his ex-girlfriend has a shop where she sells anchors, barbs, and sinkers. Basically all kinds of things that are deadweight, preventing you from getting anywhere and so on. A great idea somewhere buried in the subtext. Great fun, but as much as I enjoy the vivid argument between Tony and Rufus, I must admit that the brilliant Charlotte Moore was almost a miscast for Tony's voice. Charlotte Moore is, by the way, an extraordinary talented voice actress. She breathes so much life into Tony that a good deal of our players demanded a happy end for Rufus and Tony. Well, that was clearly not our intent. Nope, absolutely not. And that's Tony, another little star of Deponia. Have fun. Yeah, Gizmo's emergency station. That's exactly the point where my scripting team learned to hate me, and I learned to give myself kind of an evil laughter. I actually had the same team of scripters for the whole Deponia trilogy, or at least the lead scripters were the same. During Goodbye Deponia, the situation was a bit more complicated. Anyway, the three who were sticking around from the beginning to the end, my dear Claudia, Alex, and Simon, and those three pulled off miracle after miracle. And I still remember, of course, how this screen earned Simon and Alex their first bags under the eyes. By now they got a lot of those, but they've got their first. Because this room is really alterable and got all kinds of animations that need proper timing with objects that needed different conditions and states, and yet it all had played quite well together. That was a huge challenge. As it was, of course, for the artists as well. It was more or less a cheap shot in my part, to be honest. I said, okay, I only got this limited number of rooms per Deponia part. That is, so I just have to let more stuff happen in each room and make the rooms more alterable. And that's a really mean trick I pulled off. And on expense of the artists who had to draw each room 3 times, but only get paid once. That's again my evil laughter. Yeah, but content-wise was exciting to say each room is worth 3 rooms by letting it turn into 3 different forms with one pull of a lever. And all that was a puzzle spanning over multiple rooms, a puzzle corresponding with these 3 different versions of one room, visualizing this, and the puzzle turned out to be so much more complicated than in my head. That really sounded like a cool, funny idea. Yeah. But after I decided that sounded cool, we eventually decided, yeah, we'll find something cool and fun on the road down and put it away for now. That stayed and stayed and stayed. We left it there and started production, still without a clue how to put a relevant puzzle or a coherent puzzle complex for the room into this scene. But despite all this, it turned out brilliant in the end. Still starting out very laid back with an, we'll find something cool for this cabinet carousel eventually attitude didn't really help, and the room became our very own problem child. But again, I think it's cool, and as a bonus, it has very good synergy with Gizmo's character. Finally, we are in the mayor's office, and of course we have to get gold, or rather we should go to the mayor, but there was this line, and geez, man, it's difficult to keep an eye on all this at once, and that's why we integrated a hint system into the Complete Journey Edition. It's not really a hint system, so we just called it quest log to make sure I don't call it hint system, but instead use the correct term. I made this little rhyme. It rings and jingles in my head, or whatever jingles are supposed to do anyway, and just to make sure to carve that into my brain, Gunnar, our lead animator, and John, my assistant, will support me on this little song, so I may never say hint system or help system or something like that again. Quest log song.
Questlog song.
Questlog song. There's an audio commentary on the Deponia Complete Journey Edition with cool songs, and one of them goes like this. I'm stuck in some deep shit, yeah, I'm in up to my ears, and I gotta admit there's going down in recent years. I had so many noble and ambitious aims to catch. I deemed those goals as focal points, but somehow I've lost track. And looking back, I ask myself, do I still cook with gas? And if that's so, why does it feel like slogging through dense ground fog? How can I become clear on how to smear my clogged up gear? I guess I need a Questlog. Questlog!
It's an awesome thing!
Questlog!
Like a rescue ring!
Questlog comes on angel's wings, I guess I need a Questlog. How on earth did I end up so helplessly astray? And how did I get stranded what feels light years off my way? I ran in circles trying to advance my future me. Through branching possibilities I could not see the tree. Or am I still en route and everything will turn out good? And if so, why does my progress feel like a downright deadlock? What would you do if your to-do list is caught in a loop? You do if your to-do list is caught in a loop. You do if your to-do list is caught in a loop. You do if your to-do list is caught in a loop. I guess I need a quest log. Quest log!
It's an awesome thing!
Quest log!
Like a rescue ring!
Quest log comes on angel's wings, I guess I need a quest log. Quest log!
It's an awesome thing!
Quest log!
Like a rescue ring!
Quest log comes on angel's wings, I guess I need a quest log. Quest log!
Yo, yo, yo.
Oh jeez, I guess I owe everyone a big apology in terms of game design. You've just stumbled in here and only know this train wreck of a scene from Let's Plays or from your 100% legally acquired non-trilogy version, of course. I assume, as the good and honest people you are, you bought the trilogy anyway, even if you have all 3 games already on your shelf. I tip my hat onto you, you're true collectors. And to you, this apology may seem late. To all the others, probably a bit early, as you've just arrived at the scene of the most outrageous, hardest mental performance I ever demanded in a game. It's a combination puzzle spanning 2 screens and 1 minigame, and you have to assess the actual puzzle parameters from the dialogue without even seeing the object solving the puzzle. You literally have to think out of the box, or rather out of 20 to 30 boxes, and some of those boxes are pretty absurd. If you want to map the puzzle chain in your head, visualizing what you have to do to progress at this point, well, it's dirty and cheap, but I like this chain nonetheless. There are kittens you have to drug, the magnetic field on the planet gets manipulated, and you get to use bubble wrap, and at the end there waits another nice little out-of-the-box puzzle. Last one being not even that difficult, but it's a nice exercise in lateral thinking, and you have to solve it without the usual adventure mechanics. I refer to the pigeonholes over there to the left, for everyone who already did that. If you solved it all by yourself, you have my respect.
Hey, yoo-hoo, hello.
Yeah? What's up?
I'll be going then.
You do that. You shouldn't be here.
To the right, we have some carrier pigeons, and as you may know, they use the geomagnetic field to navigate, and that's part of another little puzzle I put in here. You probably haven't solved that by now, but I gave some hints in the last room. In this case, it's yet again a puzzle solved on an extra screen, a close-up puzzle, or as many like to call it, another minigame. I like minigames. Speaking of which, when I designed the game, I actually sketched the single fields on paper and switched it back and forth with coins. I really did this the old-school way, with coins and paper. Until it finally worked perfectly, and eventually, years after we built it, and I was convinced this thing was foolproof, unbreakable even, we found out there was in fact more than one way to break it by clearing a column and have another with 4 coins. Yeah, pretty embarrassing. We noticed that really late, and as the minigame was already designed, you can still do that in the final game. Yeah, you can still manage, but the interface can't handle it. Man, that's so awkward. Ouch. Oh, here I see an excellent screen I still remember from my childhood days. That's because the screen cost me years and years of my life. artists, scripters, all of us. Mainly because of the mine bike, you can clearly see right in this picture's middle. The mine bike could go into all kinds of directions, had to appear larger when in the front, then just when it goes far away, and so on. We pondered back and forth, built a 3D model even, so we could animate it properly. But when we noticed just how incredibly many animations we need, he drives all the way through, he only goes for the middle, from the middle to the left, from left to the right, and all that from front, back, and the sides, and using the elevator to go up and down. Needless to say, you age more rapidly when your oxygen supply is cut off. That can easily happen, for instance, when you have to talk a lot to explain something like this. You also age rapidly when your windpipe is crushed by the hands of an angry mob of scripters and artists acting in unusual unison while they tell you, "Are you out of your mind, Pokey? Leave us alone with your freaking mind bike!" Yeah, I think that was totally worth it. So, this is a screen where Rufus eventually meets Doc. Doc plays a very important part in the course of the story. I guess that's something I'm allowed to tell you right now.
Oh, come on.
But he does! After all, he's an experienced tinkerer and brain surgeon. I didn't mean in contrast to you, of course, but it's indisputable that he's helpful when it comes to power inverters. He's a valuable asset, isn't he?
Users? Yeah, what Pokey does here is, it's sadly common practice. By that, I mean he confuses supporting actors with heroes. And it's nothing personal. I don't have a problem with it. I can take it. I mean, I am the star. I can be at the receiving end. In that regard, what you see here, it's got nothing to do with the person that I really am.
Receiving end, huh? Like receiving Doc's poos, or receiving items you gather from all over the place. And when I said help, I meant in a way like during the voice recordings. Remember when we offered to put the chair you're sitting on together first, and where you would go I'm good, I can do that myself. And to be honest, it cost us quite some time there.
Hey, first of all, that is a cheap shot. And, I don't appreciate you doing imitations of me and spilling all sorts of private matters to our users. That is just shitty, man. But, I mean, once more, for the fans, I don't mind. Sometimes you have to be on the receiving end. That's what happens when you're a star. That's something I keep telling myself. Even if you break into a comic book store by accident at night, that's exactly the time you've got to receive. And I stay true to my credo. Always.
Clarion call for this screen and the upcoming puzzle, foreshadowed by the board over there. It's one of the most complex minigames I ever came up with. It was also tough to document and to check if there weren't any loopholes left. You probably won't notice all the effort that went into this, as most players tend to solve it via trial and error in the first 5 minutes. By the way, the Clarion wasn't necessarily for the minigame itself, even though it was great fun to design. It was to honor the fact that we finally, after years of tinkering, got rid of a freaking punk that was riding this minigame until this very version. You're now officially playing the game without that specific legendary bug. Whew, what a relief. Finally, we've made it to the second act of our game, and Rufus and Goal are united on the exciting way to the lower ascension station. If that isn't a sign of a healthy relationship, fortunately I can ask Goal right away. What did you feel during those moments of you two marching right into this adventure, being on the road, so to speak?
Actually, I don't remember this scene all too well. What I do remember are bruises, injuries. Oh, look. You can still see.
Yeah, that really shouldn't distract from the fact that your journey really welded you together.
Wait a minute, is that a crane? I think it's all coming back.
Well, and that's that. Rufus and Goal are on their way together. Alex, maybe you should just turn around. Yes, they're on their way, and we can look forward to a journey through perils and joy with a lot of adventures. Let's just see what happens. You probably know by now that I'm very fond of mini-games. What few know, though, is that as someone who works in the field of language, I'm also a big fan of lingo. There are quite some hilarious word creations in the German language, or rather German lingo, especially technical terms like flansch or sprocket, and I enjoyed using some of them here. Now that was exciting! After this thrilling mind-bag chase through the trash mines of Deponia, we've now reached the lower Ascension station and are inside the candy shop of the abandoned railroad depot. Rufus laid go down in a bed of roses and...
They were Brussels sprouts. Yes, Brussels sprouts.
Yes, Brussels sprouts.
They stuck, and I stank for weeks.
Whatever. Brussels sprouts, roses. A rose is a rose, is sometimes a Brussels sprout. However, we are heading towards the game's exciting showdown, slowly but surely. Speaking of which, I always like to point out how interesting this Art Nouveau station is. We tried our best to let the old Elysian wells shine through these ruins by showing hints of early Elysian architecture, and also Elysians have an exquisite taste for high society candy, like candy cotton with calzone flavor, or
Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts, of course, why not, or skewered anchovies. There was a huge variety of delicacies, and after all, Brussels sprouts are not so bad. Healthy, if anything. It's a good thing if a man gives Brussels sprouts to a woman, and let's move on. Youth style, you know nothing about youth style. As a German poet with terrible American accent once sang, he did that after visiting Barcelona, which, by the way, is pronounced Barcelona by its denizens. Barcelona, not Barcelona, as you might think. After this short linguistic exercise, let's get back to the Jugendstil or Art Nouveau style of this place. I'm very fond of this kind of architecture. It has this sunken city flair. I mean, we're in a building that looks like a ruined bunker from the outside, and from the inside, it's a gorgeous Jugendstil train station. That one's on me. This architectural mismatch. Your style. And now we're venturing deeper into the station, and the deeper we get, the less we can see. No, wait, in fact, the more we see, the people of Elysium, even before they became Elysians, left an architectural masterpiece, including these beautiful mosaics. Nobody knows when they were crafted, but they show scenes from the Exodus to Elysium. This, of course, doesn't seem to make any sense, but it's easy to imagine that all the glass blowers and, I don't know, Tiffany glass artist guys who've been left behind were pretty pissed, and so they left these artworks in the windows, so their wrath about the outrageous exodus to Elysium would outlast time itself. Thanks to these mosaics, we as a player have a small glimpse at the backstory of Deponia and Elysium after cleaning up, of course, and illuminating the windows, and now I gave away the solution to the puzzle. Damn. Yeah, so after cleaning, beep. Yeah. Of course, I had to come up with something since I didn't flesh out the backstory, but another important Deponia-related ritual must be Barbecue Thursday. Elevators are something you need in every single media product. No discussion, period. Because they are the one to-go metaphor for life's constant ups and downs. Elevators. Yeah, I wanted an elevator scene in Deponia, and so I sketched a screen with an elevator in it. Elevator scenes are fundamentally superior to any other scenes, especially in movies. I love, for example, that elevator scene in Star Wars, the real one, the first Star Wars movie called Episode 4 nowadays, A New Hope. There they are facing the wrong way while in the elevator, wondering why the door won't open while it opens behind them, something like that. Excellently done, and one of my favorite elevator scenes. Maybe the best one ever created is the one in Blues Brothers when they go up in the elevator and outside this massive police force is gathering while they stand idle listening to that ridiculous elevator music. There are plenty more examples. Ghostbusters, for example. Too many to give them all credit now. The following, though, is most important. Ultimately, the elevator scene I had in mind ended up in the third part of the trilogy and not here in the first. The elevator still stayed the same, and we have some fun here with elevators. Oh, yes. This screen doesn't look that alive, but that's exactly the reason why I want to talk about it. It's a good example for my effort to introduce locations to players with as much variation as possible. First, I'll introduce a location, a screen, in a specific way. Then later, you return and have to use and thus see it in a completely different manner again. It's a quite exciting change of perspective, and I can't talk about that as much as I would like right now, but you'll be surprised what you can do and where you can go here. Speaking of a change of perspective, I gotta do one of my own, and that's switching to a storytelling perspective rather than a cosmetic one. Right here, a seemingly arbitrary object reaction hints at effect I'll be intensively playing with later on, and that's a double Rufus. Cause here's a small, well, you may call it Easter egg, when Rufus tries to throw something into that pond. Something very, very absurd will happen. So absurd I couldn't stop laughing while I wrote that. I hope you'll enjoy it as well. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I really dig minigames. I guess I don't represent the majority with that attitude, but there's a growing faction, or maybe one in regress. The lines there are blurry, I reckon. Anyway, there is a faction of people who passionately hate minigames and wished those abominations would be purged from the screens altogether. And this one goes out to them. Bypassing the trenches of mortar fire, these factions, minigamers and anti-minigamers, are at constant war, you see, to see who's got the better weaponry. Right, and this is friendly not towards these bitter enemies by letting them break the minigame as hard as they want to. I gave this concept a go for the first time in Whispered World, as you can hear in the commentary over there. If you're German or if you have the luck that we did in translation for that one. And I'll try that again, as you will hear in the commentary of Chaos on Deponia. But here I'll do it as well, crashing minigames. It's a trend. In the future, I hope everyone will at least break one minigame. Finally, the top of the platform, all the way up the lower Ascension station, a clearly magical setup with an enchanted atmosphere, once more brilliantly executed by our artist Michael Benrath. But what strikes me most is that this is the first time when Rufus and Cletus meet face to face. And as far as I remember, making those two vastly different characters work together was a feat of its own. So tell me, Rufus, how was working with Cletus? In the story, the two of you are rivals, even courting the same woman. How was that kind of working experience for you?
Well, I want to use a metaphor here, even if I'm sure you won't get it, but the fans probably will. The Bible says, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Fortunately, I'm not a Catholic.
Yeah, I guess we gotta work with that. Never mind. When the cameras were switched off, however, you and Cletus were still fighting your little fights behind the scenes. And in fact, you've got to admit, Rufus, you're getting into conflicts with other people quite often, huh? Which is beneficial, mostly. But this is by no means criticism.
Oh, yeah, heaven forbid.
Your conflicts are more like conflicts with your environment in a way. A concept widely known, to artists at least, as the cussedness of things.
You know, what many people in front of the screen don't see is that there are natural laws. And personally, I think those laws are bullshit. Yeah, you could, go ahead and say bullshit. I can say whatever I like in these commentaries. And speaking of which, that day the light bulb prohibition kicked in and had to illuminate the whole set with these Chardassian eco bulbs, which have a luminosity of like 0.0004 lux per light. Do you have any idea how many bulbs we had to go through to brighten the set like that?
It was madness. All that work.
And listeners, fans out there, if I didn't have a spare battery, we couldn't have pulled that off. Tell them that.
And to add insult to injury, the elevator's lights went dead, and since the buttons weren't properly illuminated, we thought the elevator was out of order, since all the buttons' lights had to be changed as well.
Yeah, and we had to shoot all this at night.
And the stairs. All night long through the dark stairway, all the way down and up, the lower ascension station, up, and down again.
Yeah, and you hadn't mentioned that yet. We had to do all this during the night since the power blacked out on us earlier. That's what happens if all the people come home and turn their TVs on.
Yes, exactly. Actually, this was supposed to be a daylight scene.
Yeah, well, I don't think people want to hear that. Let's just move on.
The needle as a reflection of society. Yes. Needle and stitch, the needle in the haystack. The needle here is not only a tool for content or game design, it's also another proof of a total intermediality planned years in advance that is always inherent to all Daedalic products. Yeah, you will find this proof and more about the meaning of the haystack in the developer's commentary of the new Whispered World Special Edition, as it will come out in English. I'm not sure about that right now. But I won't spoil that here, of course. You gotta get yourself a copy of the Whispered World Special Edition. Suckers. I got a little anecdote on the screen. That, as a topic, is way too underrated in commentaries like this. And that's from the field of quality assurance, where games are tested. Cause as production approached the finish line, a very peculiar bug showed up in our bug reporting tool. Curiously enough, it wasn't the bug itself that was so hilarious, it was the bug ticket's name. Perhaps most absurd was that each of us, having dealt with the subject matter through scripting, text and voice recording, exactly knew what this was about, and when we read in the ticket's topic, "Whale gone, yet still fishy." Finally, Rufus made his way through the tube, which was in fact the severed highboat cable connecting Deponia and Elysium. Now he reached this weird junk cavern, but if you look closely, you can actually see what I had in mind for a long time, and that's this sort of steel beam construction that bears a striking resemblance to the tribune we'll see again on the highboat in Goodbye Deponia. So yes, we are right in the wreck of a highboat, and that's also where one of the myriads of hilarious background animations takes place. This animation almost didn't make it into the game, cause one of our animators, and that was Fabia Zobel, if I'm not mistaken, who did this most amusing background animation and gave it to Gunnar and Simone accordingly, as they were the lead animators, and they said, "No, that doesn't match the style. That's not really Deponia. It's just too much." Fortunately, I also got my hands on that animation while roaming the studio, and I intervened. "No, we definitely need that in there." Why do we all sound like idiots when I try to impersonate them? Yeah, okay. Cause I just thought we definitely need that in the game, so I thought it was really funny. Screw style for that one. If it's hilarious enough, it gets a pass, and that's that. Unlike, of course, the developer's commentary that gets into the game, even if it's not hilarious. Finally, we are on Bozo's trawler, a fitting vessel for an old pirate like him. Rufus wanted to be a pirate actually. Well, he surely is one by now. I wanted to be a pirate as well, and since I don't want to talk about the screen right now, I just sing you a pirate song instead. All hands on deck and run up the black flag, grab your rapers and daggers and ransack the treasures except for the cat. We should go below deck now to take a breaksack out and sleep. Hey! Yo ho, old pirate grey, they're taking your beer from the breakfast today. Yo ho, old pirate grey, it's already time for your nap. Hey! Now open the next neck and toast the old pack legs, your pros, and a strong in your hole, and get back to work, cause his grandson will come around and check to bring his stack of backup pants. Hey! Yo ho, old pirate grey, they're taking your beer from the breakfast today. Yo ho, old pirate grey, it's already time for your nap. Hey! He's swearing, he's cursing, I guess someone should send the nurse in. The cat wet his pants on the decking, the batman back him to his wheelchair and get him a napkin and sandwich for supper. Then switch to the upper channel, there's a rerun of Alf. There's always a rerun of Alf. There's always a rerun of Alf. I already announced this in the beginning. You probably know of my passion for minigames from other installments. This is one of the minigames where I'm truly fond of the concept, despite the fact that, well, that kind of disappears in the vortex of events happening in the third chapter. I always liked the implication. It's the cleaning of Gold's brain implant. Where Rufus, well, in his defense, handling devices like that, you just can't know beforehand what that ejecting and taking the implant bears, the inherent risk of grease spots, and I can relate. But he found those cleaning supplies, and with a steel brush he could.
With a what?
Oh, Goal, right, you're conscious again. Steel brush. Well, those stains are pretty tough. Tough stains need tough tools. I think Rufus is on the right track here. Just because that this is a delicate data storage doesn't automatically mean he chose the wrong tools for the job.
Oh, God help us all.
Yeah, shh, now. Enjoy the minigame.